Hey everyone, Liebermancer here, and welcome to the sister series to Master Quest, Second Quest. This will be a series dedicated to challenge videos and difficult gameplay. I'm by no means good at games, but I still like to try my hand at various challenges every now and then. And what better way to start off a challenge series than with a gaming challenge staple, the Nuzlocke. For those of you that don't know, a Nuzlocke challenge is essentially a self-imposed rule set meant to restrict gameplay for a normal Pokemon run. Personally, I'll be running a hardcore Nuzlocke with the following rules. Firstly, the golden rules. Rule 1. If a Pokemon faints, it's considered dead forever and can no longer be used in battle. Rule 2. You can only capture the first Pokemon on each route. Failing to capture the Pokemon, running, knocking it out, running out of Pokeballs, whatever, it's gone forever. Better luck next time. Rule 3. Each captured Pokemon must have a nickname. They are sacred, valuable party members, and a name gives them purpose. As you'll see, I care about this rule very much. As I mentioned, I'll be playing a hardcore variant, which has its own additional rule, as well as following some additional guidelines. For starters, no Pokemon in my party can be higher level than the gym leader's ace at the beginning of the fight. Leveling up during the fight is okay. If a party member gets too strong, to where they outlevel the ace, they have to be boxed until the gym is completed. Additionally, I will not be using any items in battle. Being able to heal or boost stats via items in battle, in my own personal opinion, takes away from the spirit of the challenge somewhat and also makes each team member feel a little less special. Lastly, I will be challenging myself by only using specifically mono-normal type Pokemon. This means that dual type Pokemon, like normal flying types, are a no-go. Due to this, I'll also be playing under the species clause, which allows me to re-roll my encounter for each route if I already captured a Pokemon in that evolution line, or one that doesn't meet my team criteria. In a challenge like this, the Safari Zone can kind of sit in a weird gray area within the rule set just because of how encounters work. In the first game, the Safari Zone is cleanly divided into multiple zones, and each zone has its own encounter tables, so there's a good argument for treating each zone as a separate route for encounters, and generally that's how I'd treat it myself too. As you'll see though, this really didn't matter in my run, but I mention it here because it's an interesting technicality for potential future runs. Now you may be wondering where the Generations part comes in. I plan to attempt this exact same challenge on every game in the mainline Pokemon series to see how different game design choices impact a challenge like this. I think it'd be neat to see how a challenge like this compares to each game in the generation and how they stack up with different features. Since we have to start somewhere, I decided to make my debut game in the series Pokemon Blue. While I wanted to do the unique game in each generation, the third game in each trio like Yellow, Crystal, Emerald, there are a couple of reasons why I decided to start with Blue instead. The first and biggest reason is the encounters. Being the first Pokemon game filled with predominantly normal type moves, Generation 1 Red and Blue has a decent spattering of mono-normal types to choose from. Pokemon Blue makes Jigglypuff accessible earlier and also allows Meowth as an encounter compared to the other games. There's a decent selection of Pokemon in this group, Chansey, Snorlax among others, but the real problem here is the weighting of the encounters, as in when these Pokemon are actually encountered within the story. Roughly half of these Pokemon are available for the second gym, and then the remainder are roughly available around the time the Safari Zone becomes accessible. Not only that, some of those really good encounters, like Chansey, Kangaskhan, Tauros, etc., are only available within the Safari Zone, and they have really low catch rates, so... Anyway, that's enough with the intro. With this being my first challenge, there was a good deal of setup to get through beforehand, but this video is already shaping up to be pretty long, so I think it'd be best if I just go ahead and dive right in. Alright, so first things first. I start out by booting up a copy of Pokemon Blue. Just to preface, I had to do some frame skipping shenanigans in order to get the game to actually run faster, so there may be a bit of choppiness in the footage. I start out by naming the player Libra, and naming my rival Isaac, after one of my best friends and biggest rivals. I've always lost against him in Pokemon, so by naming the rival after him, I can arbitrarily declare that I beat Isaac at Pokemon, and I even caught it on video. Unless I fail the challenge. Anyway, I stumble a bit adjusting to the controls with speed up enabled, so just get used to me bumping into walls and awkwardly pausing after each step like I just learned how legs work. I did just learn. I turn the battle mode to set and turn animations off, and then fumble around for a bit as I try to remember how this game starts off. Well, Not really having a plan, I decided I'd just pick Charmander as my first partner until I can catch my actual first encounter. While the starter doesn't make much of a difference to me since I'll be boxing it in just a few minutes, it does determine the Pokemon my rival will have throughout the game. This is a fact I actually don't really think about until a pretty good ways into my run, and it definitely comes back to bite me later. Before Isaac will let me leave though, I have to actually battle him. Now, this battle doesn't really matter since the run hasn't officially started yet, but losing would set a pretty bad precedent for the rest of the run. We trade hits back and forth in the initial battle until my rival beats me in a manner that absolutely doesn't foreshadow the run in any way. Ignoring this obvious failure, it doesn't take long before I encounter my first party member, a Rattata. I throw a Pokeball at it to catch it and add it to my team, but due to being entirely clumsy, I miss an input and skip the nickname entirely. Because the name rater is so far in and I absolutely can't have a vanilla rat in the party, I just reset and start over. Now in attempt 2, I actually go with picking Squirtle. I'm not entirely sure why I changed my mind, but there are obvious benefits, with the big one being the immediate surf and strength availability. This will, of course, have some major gameplay effects later. Once again, the initial fight with the rival is not required, and winning or losing actually doesn't change the run at all since it hasn't officially started yet, but I did take offense to losing, and I don't want anyone to know that I actually lost to Isaac, so I muster up my courage and I make sure to actually beat him this time. It's as if the previous attempt never happened, right? We trade hits back and forth, the most riveting gameplay that Pokemon has to offer, until at last, my wonderful Bee emerges victorious, and once again, all is right with the world. After finishing the fight with my rival, I head back to Route 2 to re-encounter my first party member, Rattata. There you are, you delightful little rodent. You're gonna be a very valuable member to my team for a long time. I definitely don't think anything bad is gonna happen to you. While actually being to appropriately give it a proper nickname, Jack the Rattata and I take Bee to a Pokemon Center to unceremoniously dump it in a box and then begin our training for the gym challenge. Now here's where things get interesting. Jack is the only possible encounter before Brock, so I'll essentially be taking down the rock-type gym leader with a single Chewy boy. This is actually the other reason I chose blue over yellow. In red and blue, Brock's Geodude is level 12 and his Onix is level 14, compared to his Onix being level 12 in yellow. Coincidentally, level 14 is when Rattata learns Hyper Fang, which is pivotal for this game's early roadblocks. It's a base 80 power normal type move that has a 10% chance of causing a flinch and gets a boost from stab. In Gen 1, crits are based off of speed and ignore all stat boosts by both Pokemon, and Jack's cool 72 base speed gives him roughly a 14% chance to crit. I grind on bugs to get Jack up to level 14, making sure to stop right before level 15 so I will level up after beating Brock's Geodude. I double check my experience calculations and make a quick trip to the Pokemon Center before actually challenging Brock. I already have a plan going in, which is to burn down the Geodude as fast as possible. In red and blue, Geodude also knows Defense Curl, which is actually beneficial for me. The defense boosts don't actually lower my damage output that much, and crits ignore them anyway. Any turns that the Geodude spends not attacking Jack are good turns. With my initial plan in place, I approach Brock, who hears me coming and officially challenges me to my first gym battle. Geodude does end up starting with a good number of defense curls, but with some moderate flinch and crit luck, I actually get Geodude pretty low. While some luck is required for this fight, it's surprisingly forgiving. As you can see, I actually miss a Hyper Fang here too. Thanks, base 90% accuracy. Wanting to save my final power points in Hyper Fang for Onix, I opt for Quick Attack, which just barely misses the kill, allowing Geodude to sneak in another hit. Another Quick Attack finishes the job though. Onix is trickier, but also easier since I have Tail Whip for Bide. I lead with Tail Whip to lower defense, but get hit a couple times in return. I gamble with more Tail Whips and Onix goes for Bide. Lucky break. Since I outspeed, I Tail Whip until Onix fails Bide and then go all in with Hyper Fang. Fortunately, Onix goes for a final Bide, and seeing my opportunity, I risk everything on Hyper Fang's 90% accuracy and go for the throat. The risk pays off and I walk away with a bowler badge. First major hurdle down. With that out of the way, I can actually get to my next encounter, a Jigglypuff on Route 3. After a little bit of back and forth, I welcome Gantz to the party. I should mention though, at this point my recording software failed and I didn't catch it until after I cleared Mount Moon. While in Mount Moon though, I added Ridley the Clefairy to my team, evolved it into Clefable using a moonstone I found within Mount Moon, and also taught it Water Gun. And after arriving in Cerulean City, I immediately go and challenge Isaac to another battle. In the opening turns, I immediately go all in and trying to put Pidgeotto to sleep with Gantz, and finally succeed but with only 5 HP left. Not really sure why I opted for sleep when just taking it out would have been safer, but regardless, I switch into Jack to take out the now helpless bird. Abra is a free win, so I actually swap in Ridley to get a little bit more experience. A couple pounds take out the Abra with no problem, and soon it goes down. Next is Isaac's own rat, but I quickly put it to sleep. While it does end up waking up from sleep, I'm able to take it out with a couple of pounds no problem, and shortly after it goes down he sends out Bulbasaur. I'm able to get a first turn Sing, and then just a few more pounds before I finally finish it off, wrapping up the first real rival fight and getting me my first real victory against Isaac. Defeating Isaac opens up Nugget Bridge and opens up a lot more trainers that I can fight against for experience. The level cap for Misty is only 21, and since I only have 3 party members, I get pretty close to that cap pretty quickly. Misty Starmie is pretty scary with the high special attack and high speed, but my Pokemon are also pretty bulky, especially Ridley with the special bulk, so I feel pretty confident in taking her on. After dispensing some vigilante justice on a rocket that stole the Dig TM, I take my newly powered up team into the Water Gym and challenge Misty for my second badge. Oh boy. Misty leads with her Staryu as I go exclusively for sleep with Gantz. Misty opts for an X-Defend, and combined with the Mega Punch miss, it slows me down in taking it out, but I still manage to take it out with almost all of my HP remaining. Now for the heavy artillery. Starmie comes out, and I decide to lead with Sing, and... Welp. So long, Gantz. You died so that Jack may live. Of course, Misty gets a cheeky X-Defend in, and I miss a Hyper Fang before Starmie decides to kill him with Bubble Beam. Great. Ridley is all I have left. I go for Sing hoping for a sleep, and it lands. While going for Pound, I even miss input and select Growl, which is basically useless. Starmie stays asleep though, and I knock it out with a couple of pounds. I've won, but at what cost? I do use the new Bubble Beam to replace Water Gun and decide to soldier on. Ridley was the only major party member I needed to proceed through the story with, and I do have a new encounter right around the corner, so I figured I'd see if I could go ahead and complete the adventure in spite of my loss. Either way, losing 2 of my 3 party members at this stage of the game is a pretty hefty blow to my morale, and is definitely going to make the next stages of the game quite a bit more challenging. I ceremoniously bury Gantz and Jack in Box 1, just like they would have always wanted, and then head towards Route 5 to continue my Pokemon adventure. Shortly, I run into my next encounter, Meowth. Now, I could have actually picked him up before Misty, but I don't think it would have made a difference in the fight against Starmie, and I wanted to spread EXP around my initial 3 party members. After a little bit of back and forth, I catch the Meowth, and I add Clive the Meowth to my team. Now, Meowth is definitely not my first choice in a party member, but he's pretty fast. Unfortunately, he's also really frail. I have to go around and do some switch training with Ridley in order to actually get him some experience so he can, contribute to each battle. Unfortunately, Meowth is basically the last encounter I have for quite a while in the game, and that means my party is essentially going to consist of only 2 Pokemon. Once Clive had leveled up a little bit, I took him and Ridley to the SS Ant to continue the next leg of the story. Here's where I actually encountered the next major issue, and one that I wasn't expecting to be such a problem. The level cap. Lieutenant Surge's ace, Raichu, has a level of 24, meaning that that's my level cap for this leg of the game. I'm not able to actually level up Ridley past level 24, and if I do, the run is basically dead since I would have to put Ridley in a box. This was especially challenging trying to make this work with Clive, as I was frequently switching him out from taking too much damage, which meant Ridley was inadvertently gaining extra EXP. This meant that in order to keep the run alive, I had to make the really difficult decision to go ahead and give Clive the Meowth Body Slam to jump up his damage, even though I would have much rather used that for a later encounter further on in the run. This decision does pay off though, as Clive is actually able to finally hold his own and start gaining levels without the need for switch training, and eventually I make it back to Isaac and challenge him for my 3rd rival fight. The tension here is pretty high because I have to use Ridley as little as possible, as at this point she's now level 24. I am able to knock out Pidgeotto with Body Slam thanks to a lucky potion on the rival's part, but I do take a sand attack in the process. I try to burn down Big Rat with Body Slam, but I end up missing twice in a row and losing 2 stages of defense. I'm pretty sure the crit actually saved him from death looking back. Fearing another misstep, I'm forced to switch to Ridley, and then Kadabra comes out, and I go for Sleep to switch Clive back in and half the EXP gain for Ridley. I manage to land the Sleep and take Kadabra out with a couple of Body Slams, which just leaves Ivysaur. I land a Body Slam, getting a lucky first turn paralyze, and it hits me with a Vine Whip, leaving me with 5 HP, but I managed to just barely eke out a win. So this run has been going great. But fortunately, I don't really have to worry about the level cap now that I have direct access to Surge. I'm not really worried about Surge himself either. I think Ridley can take him probably solo. I just have to make sure not to encounter any of the trainers in the gym while doing the trash can puzzle. It does take me a few attempts to get it right, but I do, eventually, and I crack open the doors and make my way to Lieutenant Surge. Let's do this. So I decide to lead with Clive, and I get a lucky turn 1 paralyze on Voltorb before I knock it out. When Pikachu comes out, Surge decides to use an X speed on it for some reason, so it ends up being another easy knockout. Raichu comes out and Surge goes for yet another X speed for some reason, and then it goes for Growl as I crit and clean it up, beating Surge with only Clive and without taking a hit. Well, that's a nice change of pace. I take some time to level up Clive in the Rock Tunnel and Wild Pokemon to evolve him as soon as possible, as he's kinda struggling against basic trainers. Evolving into Persian gives him a much needed power boost though. Not only that, but I can give the guard something to drink to actually access Saffron City, which will allow me to get the TM for Psychic. Combined with the TM for Thunderbolt that I got from Lieutenant Surge, I actually have a really good moveset for Ridley that I think will carry her the rest of the way through the game. I go ahead and teach her the TM, making her my certified special attacker, and at this point I still only have 2 party members, so I'm approaching the level cap of 29 for Erica. After beating Erica, the level cap jumps quite considerably, and now that I have Psychic in my arsenal, I actually think it's time to go ahead and take her out. While Erica's team in yellow consists only of mid-stage Pokemon, and Tangela, her red and blue team is actually quite challenging, having both Vileplume and Victory Bell on her team. She leads with Victory Bell, and I lead with Ridley. Psychic does about half damage as Victory Bell lands a nasty crit with Razor Leaf. Remember Razor Leaf crits for later. I managed to put Tangela to sleep so that I can safely bring Clive in and crush it with Clive's massive stage presence. While Tangela does wake up, it only takes a couple of body slams to actually take it out, and then Vileplume comes out. It immediately poisons Clive. Uh-oh. It also lands a heavy Petal Dance as I weigh my options. I don't want to switch in Ridley, so I end up deciding to gamble on taking her crit, and I manage to hang on with a whopping 2 HP as Vileplume goes down, skipping the poison turn. Yikes. With that out of the way, I take care of some important tasks like grabbing the bike for Cycling Road. I'll be able to add some Pokemon to the party soon. I didn't feel like grinding coins for Porygon, and Eevee is, well, Eevee, so I opted to skip them previously. After defeating Erica, the level cap also jumps from 29 to 43, which gives me a lot more flexibility in my approach. My first goal is to get the Soul Scope and rescue Mr. Fuji for the Pokeflute. Giovanni is a pushover as I steamroll him with Ridley. Bubble Beam, Thunderbolt, and Psychic are all more than enough to take care of Giovanni, and with him out of the way, I can actually take the Soul Scope to the Pokemon Tower. Unlike the previous encounters with Isaac, I caught him slipping in Pokemon Tower, as I actually outlevel him by a large margin at this point. I sweep through his entire team with Ridley so I can get through here as fast as possible. The Pokeflute that I get for completing this area is essential to the next encounter, and is arguably the most important encounter for the entire run. I sweep the floor with Isaac's team, and do a bunch of daring heroics off-screen to bring Mr. Fuji safely back to his home. You should have seen it. There was like 50 Team Rocket members, and I took them all on in a battle simultaneously, defeated them with no damage. It was a perfect run. Anyway, with the Pokeflute newly in hand from Mr. Fuji, I make my way to Celadon and immediately go for the Snorlax sleeping in front of the building. I'm excited because it's been quite a while since I've had my last encounter, and Snorlax is probably one of the best normal type encounters you can have. After putting it in a really bad mood by playing the alarm clock next to it, it attacks me in a grumpy rage, though I throw Pokeballs at it to finally catch it and add it to the team. I'm thrilled to finally add a not again, come on. Well, it's a good thing the name raider is now easily accessible in Lavender Town. Skipping all pretenses, I immediately fly directly to the name raider so that I can employ his name-changing services and officially welcome the Snorlax onto my team. After a few moments, I can officially welcome Aphelion the Snorlax into the party fold. Anyway, with that out of the way, I make my way to the Safari Zone for my next encounters. I'm looking to add Chansey, Tauros, and Kangaskhan to the team. Adding powerhouses like that to my team would definitely increase my team's total power output by a huge margin considering what I currently have to work with. That said, I'm not looking forward to actually trying to catch them, or in Chansey's case, encounter them. But before too long, I actually end up running into my first encounter, which happens to be a Kangaskhan. Now the best odds come from just chucking Safari Balls directly at it, and I managed to throw 3 before it runs away. Well, 1 encounter down. And then I encounter Chansey. That's lucky. And it ran after the very first Safari Ball. That's significantly less lucky. Anyway, I have other tasks that I can complete while I'm here in the Safari Zone, and I'm out of time. Alright, so on my second attempt through the Safari Zone, I actually managed to encounter Tauros, and I'm hedging my bets on this one. So I chuck a few Safari Balls, and thank Arceus, I actually managed to catch the Horned Devil and not bungle the nickname. So with great pride and admiration, I get to welcome Quasar the Tauros to the team. Welcome to the team, buddy. I also finally managed to stop fumbling my way around the Safari Zone and get the HM for Surf, which will let me proceed with the story later, but for now, it's time for Silphco. I have a new level cap and party members that need some training, so Silphco is the perfect place to do that. However, I end up bungling pretty badly and accidentally trigger the Isaac fight unprepared. This means I'm going into the Isaac fight leading with Quasar when I wanted to lead with Ridley. Fortunately, Pidgeot attacks with Whirlwind on the first turn, so it's not a big deal, and I'm able to counter and take it out pretty quickly with a couple of Thunderbolts. He sends out Gyarados, which goes down pretty much the same way to another Thunderbolt, but not before dealing a bunch of damage to Ridley first. I go ahead and leave Ridley in against Growlithe, expecting that Bubble Beam can take it out, and it does, but when Alakazam comes in, I'm forced to switch or I risk a KO. I thought Aphelion would do pretty well against Alakazam, but Psybeam brings him down to low health and confuses, so I'm forced to make yet another switch, and this time I try to bring in Clive to confirm the kill. Fortunately, Alakazam goes for Disable, as I thought Clive would have outsped for some reason. But here he is, Mr. Razorleaf himself, and it hits me that I have no one I can switch into, and I have to sacrifice Clive for the greater good. So with his dying breath, Clive lands his final Screech and goes down. Quasar is my last chance, and with the Screech bonus, I'm able to just barely eke out a victory as Razorleaf brings him down to critical health. I immediately leave to bury my departed friend and to prepare for the upcoming Giovanni battle. Once again, I am only left with some party members, and am forced to continue the run with the few remaining teammates that I have left. Additionally, I basically don't have any more serious encounters that I can add to the team, so if I want this run to be a success, I will have to make do with the team that I have. I return to Silph to take on Giovanni, and take out my pain of loss and frustration on his team. Nidorino goes down pretty quickly to an Earthquake from Quasar, but when Kangaskhan comes out, I miss input and rest and fall asleep. This is not ideal. Since I'm not able to wait for Quasar to wake up, I go ahead and switch in Aphelion to see if I can get some extra damage in. But as soon as he comes in, he immediately gets crit by a Comet Punch. He continues to get battered left and right while dealing out a little bit of damage on his own until he drops to 34 HP. I don't want to lose anyone else, so I swap in Ridley to try and get the rest of the job done on her own. Fortunately, the rest of Giovanni's team is weak to Ridley's movesets, and the special moves in our arsenal can kind of take out the rest of them without too much trouble. Like Bubble Beam for the Rhyhorn, or Psychic for the Nidoqueen, although Psychic's not doing as much damage as I would like to have seen at this point. But a win's a win, and Giovanni's defeated, and my team needs some serious training. So after getting some additional levels off screen, I decide that next I should go directly for Koga and Sabrina to keep that level cap moving higher. Fortunately, Koga's not too bad since Quasar knows Earthquake, and can make short work of Koga's entire team due to their poison typing. Muck comes out and tries to stall a little bit with minimize and disable, and Earthquake does end up missing once, but I'm able to take it out without too much trouble. Additionally, Quasar levels up, which means that the second coughing goes down in a single hit. But then Wheezing comes out, and I am actually afraid of a critical hit self-destruct, but fortunately I don't even see a regular self-destruct, and I'm able to take it down without too many problems. I go straight from there to Sabrina since the cap doesn't increase until they both go down. I lead Quasar here as well since her psychic types are pretty defensively frail, and his solid base speed will serve me well. I get a really nice Gen 1 miss against Mr. Mime, and I get chipped a little bit by Venomoth as I go to take it down. I went for Earthquake since I only had a single strength left and I wanted to save that for Alakazam. Speaking of which, when it comes out, I use said strength against it, and it almost takes Quasar out with a critical hit Psybeam, dropping him to 2 HP. I debate with myself for a second before I remember that Quasar can outspeed, and so I just finish it out with an Earthquake. With that battle completed, I have the Marsh badge, and also an upcoming consultation with a therapist for anxiety. Blaine bumps the level cap up to 47, so I take a little bit more time to train up on the way there. I found a neat journal in the Pokemon Mansion that references Guyana, South America, which confirms that Pokemon are real. Then I have to dump my pockets out to pick up a singular small key. The item management in this game is definitely not great, and I'm really looking forward to not having to deal with these problems in subsequent games. With the key in hand, I make my way through Blaine's gym and I get ready to challenge the Fire-type gym leader, but I'm not really worried about him because I have Quasar with Earthquake, and really that's all I need to steamroll his gym. Case in point, Growlithe, Ponyta, and Rapidash all go down with a single Earthquake from Quasar without any chance to even attack him. His Arcanine comes out and actually manages to live with about a third of his health left after that Earthquake, but it just goes for Roar and then goes down next turn. And with that, I have the 7th badge, and need to dump my pockets out so I can hold on to Blaine's floppy disk. That joke is relevant to the era and not just crude humor, I promise. But with that being said, now I think it's finally time to add the final move to Aphelian's moveset that's going to make a huge difference for the remainder of the run, Ice Beam. Aphelion has Amnesia, which boosts the special stat by 2 stages, and in Gen 1, both special attack and special defense are combined on the same stat. So essentially, Amnesia is probably the most broken skill in the entire game. And with Ice Beam in its arsenal, we can finally take advantage of that, which will be very helpful when fighting Giovanni, the ground-type gym leader. Giovanni sends out Rhyhorn as I lead with Ridley and easily knock it out with a single Bubble Beam. Dugtrio, though, actually manages to hang on, and lowers my accuracy with the Sand Attack. Not wanting to gamble with accuracy drops, I actually switch Aphelion in, who gets hit with the Sand Attack, so I just turn around and switch Ridley back in as Dugtrio digs. Thinking that I can sustain a dig, I stay in, but it crits, dealing a lot of damage to Ridley in return. At this point, Ridley has sustained a lot of damage, so I switch Aphelion back in to make use of the Amnesia strategy that I had mentioned earlier. I'm able to set up Amnesia pretty easily against Nidoqueen, and then from there, I proceed to just spam Ice Beam to melt and freeze the rest of Giovanni's team, earning me my 8th and final gym badge. From here, it's time to take the 3 Musketeers to the Indigo Plateau and challenge my rival Isaac to yet another showdown. My confidence is definitely wavering a little bit, considering I still only have 3 party members, I'm not doing super great in regards to the level cap, and that Venusaur in the back is really scary with Razor Leaf, but I have no choice but to forge on ahead. Pidgeot comes out first, as is the rival's tradition, and I'm already leading Aphelion to go straight into the Amnesia Ice Beam strategy. I'm able to set up 2 Amnesias and take out the Pidgeot with Ice Beam, as well as the following Rhyhorn, without really any issue. I'm not sure how Gyarados would react to Ice Beam, so I opted for Body Slam instead and still took it out in 2 hits anyway. And Growlithe came out and I OHKO'd it with a single Body Slam. Amnesia means that Alakazam's Psychics won't be doing much damage outside of crits, but it manages to hang on from a Body Slam. Not only that, but the Psychic that it did land actually manages to drop my special, and I think for a little bit about if I should switch out or not, as the lowered special means I may not be able to take out the Venusaur cleanly. But I decide to stay in and go for another Amnesia to boost my special up some more, and then rest to try and top off my HP for when the Venusaur actually comes out. The strategy ends up working out pretty well because I end up going into the Venusaur fight with an extra stage of special. But of course, when a Venusaur comes out, it goes for growth, so Ice Beam doesn't kill it cleanly, and then it lands a really nasty Razor Leaf that almost takes Aphelion out. Even though I won the battle, you can see just how nasty Razor Leaf is whenever it ignores all of the previous stat boosts. Even though I only have 3 team members, my party has been fairly underleveled for many portions of the game, and even random trainers have been moderately challenging. This was made most apparent when going through Victory Road. I mean, look at this Parasect demolish Quasar with a combination of Spore and Slash, and I had to switch in Aphelion just to take out this one single Parasect from a random trainer. And then there's this trainer who had the entire Bellsprout family line, which wouldn't be too bad in theory, but look how much damage that Razor Leaf does. And that was a mid-stage Weepin' Bell at level 43. And the Victory Bell that comes out afterwards also knows Razor Leaf, which forces me to switch or risk a KO. Aphelion gets dropped down to under a quarter health, and this is a Victory Bell. The champion's Venusaur is gonna be this, but stronger and bulkier, and not to mention at a much higher level. So clearly, the level that I'm currently playing at is not gonna cut it. Fortunately, I'm up against the Elite Four next, which means that the level cap is much higher, all the way at a balmy 62. With only the 3 party members at my disposal and none of them even being at level 50, I finally bit the bullet and decided, alright, time to grind. So I took the 3 of them to the Seafoam Islands where I could get the most consistent training, turn the brain off for a little while, and did as much grinding as I could possibly stomach. Which admittedly really wasn't all that much, but it was a pretty big difference when compared to the original levels that I had to start with. It was a slow grind to be sure, but considering I only have 3 party members, I needed to make sure that I wasn't leaving anything up to chance. After grinding, I made my way back up to the Indigo Plateau. I had been stockpiling some rare candies that I had been grabbing throughout my adventure, and now was the perfect time to cash in on them. I used what remaining money I had on healing items for in between the Elite Four battles, and different vitamins to boost important stats, like attack for Quasar. After doling out the rare candies so that all 3 of my party members are roughly equivalent in level, I gave them one more good look over to make sure their movesets were good and they had worthwhile stats. So before starting the Elite Four, here's a quick preview of my team. Yes, I'm going to attempt the Elite Four in a hardcore monotype Nuzlocke with 3 relatively underleveled Pokemon, compared to the highest level cap of course. What could possibly go wrong? Leading off the Elite Four is Lorelei, the Ice-type member of the Elite Four. Being the Ice-type member, she has a lot of Pokemon that are also Water-type, so I went ahead and led with Ridley so that I could use Thunderbolt against those initial first Pokemon. Dugong doesn't present much of a challenge and goes down in a couple Thunderbolts. Likewise, Cloyster, which actually has pretty bad special, goes down in a single Thunderbolt. Slowbro, which can be a menace due to amnesia, also goes down in just a couple Thunderbolts. But when Jinx comes out, I don't have a solid answer for it, so I decide to go ahead and switch into Aphelion instead, to soak some Ice Punches. However, she ends up actually doing a lot more damage than I anticipated due to a critical hit. That's okay though, I can just switch right back into Ridley since Lapras is Water type, and continue my Thunderbolt barrage. However, as soon as I bring Ridley in, she gets frozen solid by Blizzard, which means I need to switch to Quasar now and hope Blizzard misses, which it does thankfully. Because that first Blizzard missed, I was able to actually use 3 strengths to knock out Lapras. I got a critical hit on the second hit, but I think I would have been okay even if I didn't get a critical hit there. Next is Bruno, who is actually the easiest fight in the Elite Four for being the fighting type, which is my team's only true weakness. I decide to lead with Ridley because of Psychic, and basically just hammer that Psychic button while grabbing a snack. Even though Psychic isn't super effective against Onix, it has really low special, so Psychic is able to kill it anyway. And in fact, the entire team goes down to a single Psychic each. Machamp could be a threat if it potentially gets a crit with its submission, but Bruno decides to use an X defend for some reason, and I take it out with the second Psychic, winning with no damage. Next up is Agatha, who could normally be a challenge, but even though she's the Ghost type Elite Four member, all of her Pokemon are actually Poison type, which means that Quasar with Earthquake is basically a steamroll for the entire team. Case in point for this battle, Agatha starts with her first Gengar, and I'm able to knock it out cleanly with a single Earthquake. Agatha's next Pokemon that she sends out is Golbat, which I can't hit with Earthquake, so I decide to go for Double Edge instead, trying to one-hit KO it, but I'm not able to do so. However, it whiffs its turn, and I'm able to take it out immediately afterwards. And then the rest of her team is just Earthquake spam for the win. Haunter goes down, Arbok goes down to a single Earthquake, and then out comes our final Gengar, which actually manages to hang on with a slither of health, but misses its Toxic and goes down to a second Earthquake right afterwards. That's 3. For Lance, that Gyarados is really nasty, so I actually lead Ridley to take it out as fast as possible with Thunderbolt. A crit Hyper Beam spells bad news for basically anyone on my team. And as much as I would love to lead Aphelion and start with an Amnesia setup, I don't think I can safely set up against that Gyarados for the aforementioned Hyper Beam shenanigans. That said though, a single Thunderbolt is actually enough to take it out. With the Dragonair that comes out, I want to put it to sleep so I can use it to set up Amnesia on Snorlax, so I go for Sing. I miss the Sing, and Dragonair lands a Hyper Beam, but it needs a turn to recharge, so I just try and Sing again and knock it out. With the Dragonair safely pacified, I go ahead and swap Aphelion in to start the Amnesia process. Dragonair wakes up early, and I only get 2 Amnesia boosts off, but when I go to use Ice Beam to start cleaning up, I click Rest. So many misclicks this run through. So obviously sleeping's not great, and I lose unnecessary HP in a situation I didn't need to. Fortunately, Dragonair is not much of a threat and goes down to a single Ice Beam. Aerodactyl lands a weak bite and thankfully doesn't crit, and also goes down to an Ice Beam. Lastly is Dragonite, who has a 4x weakness to Ice, so a final Ice Beam knocks it out, sealing the deal and finishing off the Elite Four. At last, the moment has come, the champion battle. Me versus Isaac, as it should always be. I decide to lead Ridley against his Pidgeot. Well, what happens next is a rather comical series of events where I try to put the Pidgeot to sleep so that I can get a safe switch for Aphelion to start setting up with Amnesia. However, when I finally get Sing to land, Pidgeot first turn wakes up 3 times in a row. This means that there's a lot of back and forth switching between Ridley and Aphelion, as every time Pidgeot wakes up, I need to switch back over to Ridley to try and put it back to sleep again. This ends up being detrimental in the long term too, because sleep isn't very accurate, with only a 55% hit chance, and every single time I miss with Sing opens Ridley up to take more damage from Pidgeot. Speaking of actually taking damage, Ridley takes not 1, but 2 separate Sky attacks from Pidgeot while trying to put it back to sleep so that I can begin the setup process. Not only that, but you may have noticed that Pidgeot actually landed a Sky attack without charging after it came out of sleep previously. This is because in Gen 1, sleep doesn't reset charge moves like Razor Wind or Sky Attack, and once the Pokemon wakes up, they will actually have maintained their charge from before they were put to sleep, giving them the ability to immediately attack. All of that aside, I finally get to KO Pidgeot with Ice Beam and Alakazam comes out. Since I have 3 Amnesia boosts this time, Psychic is barely a tickle and a single Body Slam takes care of it. Rhydon comes out next, which is no match for a full boosted Ice Beam and immediately goes down. Gyarados has the potential to be scary, especially when it leads with Leer, but instead of following up with Hyper Beam, it uses a weak Hydro Pump instead and goes down. I expected Arcanine to be an easy takeout, but it actually deals a bunch of damage with Takedown. Fortunately, I get a lucky Paralyze with Body Slam, and I use this time to recover my HP back up to full. Arcanine misses 2 takedowns in a row, which means I'm going into the final Venusaur at full HP, which is exactly what I wanted. Venusaur comes out and immediately uses Growth so that my Ice Beam isn't able to take it out, and I'm afraid of a Razor Leaf, but it instead goes for a weak Mega Drain, and I'm able to finish it off with another Ice Beam, winning the battle, crowning me as champion of the Kanto region and the eternal victor between the rivalry of myself and Isaac. And he cannot argue with it because I captured it right here, live on video. Whew, that was a tough run. I had a lot of deaths and way more close calls than I would have liked, and a lot of mistypes that I wish I wouldn't have recorded myself doing, but I beat the challenge with the small, specialized team and had a lot of fun as a result. Gen 1's quirky mechanics made things pretty interesting, and overall, I'd have to say I'm pretty satisfied with my first major Nuzlocke run. This is actually the first Nuzlocke challenge that I've ever really attempted on my own, and I kind of went in blind, so it was definitely an experience to have, to be sure. And I'm definitely looking forward to the next runs after this one. Anyway, if you made it here to the end of the video, thanks for watching and showing your support. Feel free to let me know what you think, and like and subscribe if you want to see the journey continue. See y'all soon!